I've never done this before, so we're just going to kind of go into this. This is my unbiased point of view on a little bit of existential philosophy, The Last Messiah. To preface with everything, I just want to go ahead and say that the reason I'm diving into things like this is because I want to be able to see the world not from a one point of view. I don't want to have blinders on. So with that, I've kind of taken a little bit of a step back from my normal faith in Christianity a little bit in an attempt to ultimately deepen my faith, but to also be able to see things from different perspectives. Because I think that your beliefs I think it's pretty common knowledge that your beliefs are kind of based on where you are geographically located. So me being in the United States of America, most people are Christian, and that's the right thing, versus somewhere else, so their religion would be the right thing. So I think that might be a little odd to me. So in an effort to deepen my faith, I've decided to dive into different things like existential philosophy, different religions and belief systems, not to find answers, but to get an overwhelming, all-encompassing knowledge, which could most likely deepen my original faith. With that, I just got done reading this literally like an hour ago, and I was going to go to the gym, but it was on my mind so heavy because this was so fun to read. It was so crazy that I felt like the need to make a video. I never thought I was going to just do that. And this is quite possibly the scariest thing I've ever read. If you read it from an unbiased perspective, because then you have to just take things as they are versus denouncing them with whatever your current belief system is. And that is freaking scary. So what this is about, this is The Last Messiah by Peter Wessel Zapffe. I don't know if I said that right. What this is about is essentially, I don't know if anyone's ever seen that little clip on like a reel or something like that. It's from a show. The guy goes, "I think human consciousness is a tragic misstep in evolution." So that's what this is about, essentially. I mean, not based off that, but this was written in 1933. This is an essay. So this is about the human mind becoming its own detriment and how we distract ourselves to deal with it. And so I have it annotated. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to go chapter by chapter and try to just make this as quick and concise as possible. And I swear I'm not crazy. Damn. You have to say that. I'm not crazy. I just very much love learning about different things with an open mind. And this is something you have to read very lightheartedly. And I don't know. I just have a fascination with things like this. So chapter 1 is just about, and I'm just going to do like a summary. Chapter 1 is essentially about a man long ago just waking up one day, and he literally saw himself. And I'm not going to read it word for word, but I have some underlying things. But essentially, he had woken up and just saw himself one day and went to go hunt for food, and then thought about the nature of what he was hunting and what he was doing, and the suffering and the brotherhood that brings with everything alive. And so that day he went out to hunt and came back with nothing. And then the next day, he was dead. He killed himself. Spoiler alert. Which is an insane way to start anything. Chapter 2 kind of just goes into like what happened. And so essentially like our species is saying, this is saying, and none of this is all just philosophy in a way. He's saying that, and I say he, Mr. Peter Wessel Zapffe. He's saying that our species has just become too armed too heavily, and that we have transcended nature in a way, and that that nature answers to us no more, and it performed like a miracle with a man. But damn, I'm not good at this. Essentially, they're saying that we've eaten from a tree of knowledge and now have been expelled from nature, and we are our own separate entity. And the tree of knowledge being us becoming cognitively aware. I have this underlined. So there he stands with his visions, betrayed by the universe in wonder and fear. The beast, like a lion, knew fear as well, in thunderstorms and on the lion's claw. But man became fearful of life itself. Indeed, indeed of his very being. So the lion fears normal naturistic things. I don't know if that's a word. While the man fears the contemplation of life itself and what it actually means to be here. We keep going. I'm just going with underlined things, and I just recommend reading this. It's literally 10 pages. But like things like the man fears like the idea of he's now able to conceptualize what this reads as future's curtain unraveled itself to reveal a nightmare of endless repetition, a senseless squander of organic material. So he's just able to perceive a future and understand that like he has no idea how to conceive it, and it's scary because you don't actually know the meaning of all of it. And the fact that he's just now able to feel compassion, and he's able to look at his hands and like wonder, why do I have 5 fingers? And like just random things like this, but he's just the man is no longer oblivious to himself like any other animal. And then like something I have written down here is, but as he stands before imminent death, he grasps into nature also and the cosmic import of the step to come. His creative imagination constructs new fearful prospects behind the curtain of death, and he sees that even there is no sanctuary found. So now he contemplates death, and if he were to just die, now he has to think about what happens after that. And that leads you into a whole thing of religion and beliefs that we don't 100% know. It's called belief or faith for a reason. One of the reasons I'm diving into this is because I don't want to be one-track minded, because I know that no one actually knows. We believe, but if you choose to see things, but we don't actually know. So essentially, it's just talking about how we're the universe's helpless captive. And then we go into chapter 3 here. And then we get into the end of chapter 2, and he's talking about a species of elk, the Irish elk, which is an elk that grew, through evolution has grown massive antlers that aided it in its evolution, becoming, this great thing, but ultimately became its pitfall. And the antlers became too big, and I believe absorbed too much nutrition, but also as the landscape around it changed from just straight grasslands to now forest, it became hard to navigate. And those antlers actually became one of the reasons why it died out and became extinct. And like the human mind, he's pretty much relating that, saying that we have become too cognitively aware, and that would be our evolutionary detriment. But in chapter 3, we talk about the difference between us and this great white elk. I think it's the white elk, or Irish elk, I'm sorry. And it talks about how we humans, the difference between us and this elk is this thing called Beya, or in philosophy it's called Beyaung. And what that is this elk was able to accept life for all its suffering and the joy is just part of its existence. And the difference between us and this elk is we as humans don't do that. What we do is we save ourselves by artificially limiting the content of our consciousness by things like distractions and clinging onto things like belief systems and all that jazz. So the difference is the human being is able to save itself and carry on. As we keep going. So what happens is we develop these anchor systems, as he starts to talk about anchor systems, belief systems, religions, things to distract us from the ultimate reality of the inconceivable nothingness. Damn, I sound so crazy. And so the result is lasting. So if we were to break away from this anchor system, it says here, or he says, the result is lasting insecurity, feelings of inferiority over compensation, restlessness. Insofar as this state falls into certain categories, it may subject to psychoanalytic treatment, which aims to complete transition to new anchorings. So even if you fall away from your original anchorings, our mind happens to just create new ones. So if you fell away, say from, and this is all open discussion, none of this is trying to be offensive or anything like that. If you fall away, say from Christianity, the natural thing some people would do is then cling on to a new belief system. And it's just another anchor. And every culture around the world has its great, rounded system of anchorings built on foundational fermentates, the basic cultural ideas, and all that good stuff. Which is amazing, by the way. I'll say it's amazing because to not question is a beautiful thing. I think when people say, I don't want to call people ignorant, that's mean. I'm not going to say ignorant because that's not the truth. I would say, like, when you don't question things and everything just kind of makes sense because you choose for it to make sense, it's nice. Which is another reason why this is a scary read if you're choosing to read it from an unbiased perspective. Oh yeah, so it says here, whenever people realize the fictitious or redundancy of their segments, they will strive to replace them with new ones. And then we have a good little excerpt here on like the rich and powerful. Why do people crave money so much, right? One of the great reasons is it says, the craving for material goods, power, is not so much due to the direct pleasures of wealth, as none can be seated on more than one chair or eat himself more than sated. Rather, the value of a fortune to life consists in the rich opportunities for anchoring and distraction offered to the owner. So wealth ultimately can provide greater distraction from reality, which reality in this situation would be very scary, and you don't want to face it. And then we talk about, let's keep going. We're just powering through it here. And then it says here, like some people like this, like we love anchorings for saving us, but also hate them for limiting our sense of freedom. It's things like phones, right? Like anchorings, like a phone is a distraction. And so we hate them, obviously, because it makes it feel like it's taken away from our sense of freedom. And so if I stopped using my phone, I would then have time to go do something else, like a hobby, which is another distraction, right? So we would just replace one anchor with another. And I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm reading that properly, but this is me just doing this live. And so let's read this right here. When a human being has eliminated those of his anchorings, so when a human has eliminated his anchorings that are visible to himself, only the unconscious ones stay put. Then he will call himself a liberated personality. So like even for me, so I can put this for me, like I'm not saying, so I may consider myself a liberated personality, right? Like I may say, oh, I'm free of these anchors if I choose to see it from this perspective. But in reality, I still have unconscious anchors that tie me down with a bunch of random things. And I'm gonna keep those or else that would drive me mad. I will gladly wear those. Let's keep going. It says life. It says here, he compares life to an airplane. An airplane is made of a heavy material, just like life can be considered a very heavy thing. But embodying a principle that can keep it airborne whenever flying. So what that's saying is an airplane has all of the science that goes into keeping it flying. Just as we have our own beliefs and things or anchors that keep us afloat and keep us moving forward. And if the airplane stops using this, the motors, and I don't know how a freaking airplane works, I'm not that smart. If it stops using these things, it falls. In the same way with a human mind is if we stop using these anchors and belief systems, then our mind would then probably not go into a great place. So it says the pilot may grow drowsy and comfortable out of habit, but the crisis is acute as soon as the engine flunks. So the crisis, as soon as something in your belief system goes wrong and you have no anchor, that's when things go south. And it compares it to things like war veterans and suicide rates amongst, it says here like German officers after the war, Chinese students after the revolution, and high suicide rates. We're almost done. And then like alternatively, or I guess you would say, alternatively, another considerable evil. It says, a considerable evil of imprisonment is the denial of most distractive options. So it's like a double-edged sword. You have because you can choose to just have all of the distractions and be okay with it, but also an even more considerable evil is not choosing to have those distractions, because then you're faced with the harsh realities of what life could possibly be through this perspective, which I think is kind of interesting because it's kind of like either way, you're cooked. Then we're talking about a little bit about why we are so goal-oriented, right? And I've actually talked about this in my previous video, which is a lot more lighthearted and a lot more positive. But this is talking about how whenever a goal is reached, their yearning moves on. Hence, its object is not the goal, but the very attainment of it. We as humans are very goal-oriented. But it's not about, we don't care about the goal, we care about the striving for the goal. And there will always be a next one. And it's the process, it's just having something to attain that keeps us really chugging. The human yearning is not merely marked by a striving toward, but equally by an escape from. I have that underlined, but we're just going to continue on because I just had a blank. So let's just keep moving a little bit. I'm just going to power through this, like I said 10 times already. And I want to get to the end here because I don't want this to be too long of a video, because this is a 10-page thing. You can just read it on your own and create your own opinions on it. The absence of naturally, biologically based spiritual activity shows up, for example, in the pervasive recourse of distraction. So then it talks about, okay, this is good. It says the absence of naturally based spiritual activity shows up, for example, in the pervasive recourse to distraction. So we lose our natural spiritual activity through distraction, and the further we get through deeper and deeper into humanity, the deeper these distractions become. You know what I mean? So he talks about entertainment and sports and radio and all that good stuff. And things like collective ideology, communism, psychoanalysis, golly. So like when things go wrong, just our ability to reinterpret suffering so people can tolerate life. Now I'm just rambling. So let's get into some good stuff here so I can wrap this up. Biologically fit and saying they're critical surplus. So he's talking about how we have a critical surplus of cognition. We have too much knowledge. And like the way I like to think about it, I guess, is like world news. Like sometimes like we have all this knowledge of all these things that are going on, on the other side of the world, versus way back in the day, you just had knowledge of what was going on in like your village or what was going on in your immediate family. Like maybe we weren't meant to know all of these things. And I'm not saying it's not necessary, because it's definitely necessary now because we've evolved to that state. We need to do these things or else good and bad things will happen. But we do have a critical surplus of knowledge, and it has to go somewhere. Or we have to suppress it. So he comes to a conclusion here, or a little bit of a conclusion, not a conclusion just quite yet, but a statement. He says, through a deliberate degeneration to a more viable nadir may certainly save the species in the short run. It will, by its nature, be unable to find peace in such resignation, or indeed find any peace at all. So even if we chose to stop increasing our knowledge, and we chose to dumb things down, we still wouldn't find peace because we know we can do more. We've already gotten to that point. And I just wrote damn. And this is the last page. So this is our conclusion. He talks about, and this is where the last Messiah, I guess, comes from. And this is what he says. So he's talking about in the future. He says, then will appear the man who as the first of all has dared strip his soul naked and submitted alive to the outmost thought of the lineage, the very idea of doom. So what he's saying is this is a man who's accepted his fate, bringing us back to the Irish elk and Bejaung. It's German. I looked it up. And so this man has finally accepted his fate. And so what this is this man comes forth and just says, I'm accepting this. A man who has fathomed life and his cosmic ground, and whose pain is the earth's collective pain. With what furious screams shall not mobs of all nations cry out for his thousandfold death, when like a cloth his voice encloses the globe, and the strange message has resounded for the first and last time. And so what this is saying is pretty much that this man has come forth and said his truth about what he thinks the reality of life is. And everyone around him cannot fathom this. And because the reality of what he's saying is too scary, that we could be essentially meant for nothing, and that we've evolved past way too far, and it's too scary. And people would say, no, I'd rather just believe that this God is going to save me than think your way of thinking. And so what they do is they decide to kill him. And then he closes here with what he thinks a logical conclusion and resolution would be to this situation. He says, know yourselves, be infertile, and let the earth be silent after ye. And when he has spoken, they will pour themselves over him, led by the pacifier makers and the midwives, and bury him in their fingernails. So what he is saying is that he thinks that I believe what he is trying to say at least, is that we are better off not reproducing and allowing ourselves to, or letting the earth be silent after us, as in allowing nature to just continue to be nature, because he thinks we are an anomaly of nature. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because we would kill this man anyway and continue on, because that's what we as humans do. And society, as I wrote down, society will reject ultimate existential truth because it's just too scary. And so, yeah, this was my little unbiased review on one of the scariest freaking reads you can have. I'm gonna go. Oh, hold on. I have a little excerpt here from another book, Fahrenheit 451. This is I forgot to put this in here, but this is one of my favorite quotes, and this is also to do with distracting yourself. Listen to this. Cram them full of non-combustible data. Chock them so damn full of facts that they feel stuffed, but absolutely brilliant with information. So things like when you're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and you're getting all these random stupid facts that are just so irrelevant, but it makes you feel smart. Like, oh, did you know that you can, do this random thing that, like, you know what I mean? But you feel brilliant with the information. Then they'll feel they're thinking. They being us. They will feel like they're thinking. They'll get a sense of motion without moving. We'll feel like we're making progress, but we're not actually going anywhere. And they'll be happy because facts of that sort don't change. Don't give them any slippery stuff like philosophy, like what we're talking about right now, or sociology to tie things up with. That way lies melancholy. Any man who can take a TV wall apart and put it back together, and most men can nowadays, is happier than any man who tries to slide rule, measure, and equate the universe, which just won't be measured or equated without making man feel bestial and lonely. Sorry, damn. Okay, that's it. That was fun. And lightheartedly, you have to read things like that. But in an effort to gain a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of perspective, I think it's 100% worth it. And we're going to stay positive, as always, and keep learning.